all I have to say to that, and say if they're really lucky, they'll get the buyout, and they'll actually get their $5 million or whatever. And in fact, of the 10,000 people that got paid off, and again, Greer could correct me on this. I don't know if they even told him, but I would imagine that most of the time, because I remember we got the $10 million buyout offer in Boston, a very some really nondescript businessmen, and they're just like, hey, how about, and he gets the friendly buyout offer. I would say that most of the time, the people who took the money, they had no idea what was really going on. They wanted the money anyway. So they're like, oh, that's cool, $10 million for that? Well, thank you. I think I'll get a nice tan in the Bahamas now. And they never had any idea what might have happened if they had been a little, resistant to the plan. And in fact, I have seen enough of these situations where, in fact, one of my coworkers was a Justice Department investigator who, we're talking going back, 30, 40 years, where the 100 mile per gallon carburetor deal, and the guy wouldn't take the money, and eventually got the Justice Department involved. Well, again, their pockets are so deep to keep this stuff under wraps, they just add a couple zeros to the offer. So instead of the $500,000 in literally $500,000 a sack of cash, when he got the Justice Department involved, it became $50 million, and so, but again, they just, they can.
And then nobody ever heard from him again.
Well, that's exactly, and in fact, this one guy, again, it was educational to hear these stories. Again, to the investigator for the Justice Department who actually, who looked into it, and he was the one who was, in fact, this guy, after he got the death threat from the automobile company, he actually got the Justice Department involved, and essentially the Justice Department said, so what do you want us to do about it? And the guy's like, well, protect me, and the response as delivered by my coworker, and again, this is many years after he was no longer working in the Justice Department, was essentially, yes, we can change your identity and move you somewhere in the country, and they're never going to find you, except it looks like you're really interested in trying to get this stuff out there. So, as soon as you start trying again, well, you're back on the radar. So we suggest you settle. And so anyway, the deal got 100 times better, and so again, it's easy.
And he went away. Hey, Tom, maybe Stoyan's shooting a little low. He only needs $100,000 to up his. Tom's seen the experiment. This guy's done because some of the critics said when he did his first experiment, they said, "Oh, that's ion wind." But you got there that movement. He moves objects with. He does a pulse technique with energy, and magnets as well. Everything. And he said, okay, fine, no problem. He did it in a vacuum tube with the same movement and effect, right? And filmed it. And to go to the next level, he needs a certain amount of energy. The lab that he worked in didn't have the energy capacity that he needed to take it to the...
That's like Tesla, wiping out Colorado Springs for a day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So to go to the next level, he needs a different lab, and now the different lab is in a different university, and there's going to be money involved. It's going to cost money. So, I mean, he's already working in a university. So to go and do that is going to take, now they want money for it. And it's like, okay, well, I can't really do that unless I have $100,000, unless he wants to do it out of his own pocket, and it may be a great job working in a university, but I don't think they pay you that well that you can just fund your own research.
Absolutely, and again, what you're describing, I mean, that's a standard story, and it's like usually the inventor who's doing this kind of stuff, his credit cards are maxed out. He's mortgaged his house. He's on the last thing. He's trying to get that next nut, and it's just, and again, you're not even within 1,000 miles of the dragon's lair when you're there. All I'm saying is that most of the time people doing that, it never rises to the level where the big guys need to do anything. I mean, you're usually going to fall on your own sword, or you're not going to have enough money. It's always shoestring. In fact, Brian O'Leary, when he was getting involved in this 20 years ago, and this was again, I think, an important thing to understand. he was involved with, in fact, there was some big high-tech multi-bazillionaire guy who funded a conference in Colorado. I think it was, in fact, they were filming a Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey at the same time, and they were there. Anyway, so there's this guy, this big rich guy who's, I mean, Bearden's there, and basically the names of Free Energy are there, and Brian's there, and there's this, and the marketing people for the bazillionaire basically gave a presentation to, you know, all these free energy people, and basically said that, you know, this early stage development stuff, it's just the rate of return is not going to be, it's not there, you know, and so we're really not going to devote much funding to this unless, you know, I'm going to become the next Bill Gates of energy. So, and in fact, Brian eventually, Brian says this a lot in his work ever since then, there's this kind of no man's land, okay, between the guy in his garage and, you know, and capitalist, you know, the capitalist world picking it up and taking it and trying to develop it for market. And there's this huge gulf that's the venture capitalist world, et cetera. And the thing is that if an inventor works with the venture capitalists, he's going to lose the rights to it. Okay, and again, that's another.
Yeah,
again,
sure, we'll give you the money, no problem. We'll let you develop your dream,
all
but
yeah,
we need to get a return.
A return. And when it gets into that world of economics and, you know, all this money, et cetera, again, the guys who run the world, when they see that, again, that's just like, oh, they're at 2.5 now, you know, and again, it's not even to the nuisance level yet. And the fact is, they know that capitalism is such a shark tank anyway, that usually the treasure of the Sierra Madre effect takes over, and then it ends up in a bloodbath anyway because everybody's fighting over it because they some primeval level of them realizes this is a $250 technology, and so it's just, and I've seen this, it's bloody, and it's kind of like, and maybe a couple people survive that experience, you know, and the technology ends up, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many, you know, people's garages and warehouses have a prototype in it that eventually the whole thing just collapsed, and it's sitting, I mean, literally, and the prototype's sitting in a barn someplace because you're going to need, you know, $5 million to get going again, you know, but the whole thing self-destructed because greed took over and these kinds of things. And so, again, to become a contender, to actually get, and again, Dennis, when he was doing the thing, it was just a heat pump. It wasn't even thinking free energy. But at that, how to say it, the attention that we received from just the local energy industry, okay, with a hitman who was a guy who was a provocateur who had fake alternative energy credentials and stuff, who infiltrated the company, and a woman died because of his actions and all these kinds of things. Again, we were maybe a nuisance. I mean, again, the global controllers, they took notice, they watched, they were like, oh, isn't that interesting? And again, and as we're picking up the pieces a few months later, that's when we got the original friendly buyout offer. How about $10 million for your bright idea? You know, and again, they added a couple zeros, you know, a year later when we really started making some waves. And, but I would say that even when we were doing the thing in Ventura, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody had ever become more of a threat. But at the same time, though, it wasn't much of a threat. I mean, really, in the big,
No.
if you're thinking to get to that finish line, and we were, you know, to get to the end zone, we were still at our own 30-yard line, you know, and
Right,
so,
right.
you know, I don't think anybody's ever passed the 50-yard line.
I remember years ago on the Open Minds radio show with Bill Jenkins. You know who that Bill Jenkins is? Years ago he had a radio show. And he used to have Bedini on all the time. And Bill Bedini.
Oh, Bedini, uh-huh.
John Bedini. He used to have him on the radio show all the time. And they were convinced that just down the road, just around the corner, that this was all going to be out in the open.
Oh, yes.
We're all going to have Bedini devices in our basements.
Yes.
And that it was inevitable. There's no way that they could stop this now.
It's unstoppable.
And that was like 20 years ago, right?
I've been there. Yes, I hear you. And well, we got stopped. Yeah, we got stopped pretty
Pretty dead.
dramatically.
Yeah.
You know.
So
We got stopped
I just thought it was amazing. I listened to a lot of the old radio shows, like the older radio shows, like Bill Jenkins, Open Minds, and he had Bedini on. He had Bearden on back then. He had a lot of the stuff there was going, you know, and Bearden was telling stories about people being looked after, or people being manipulated and controlled in the industry.
Oh yeah.
And they thought for sure that Bedini's stuff was going to be out in the public anytime now, that the time has come, that the people won't take it anymore, and
all that stuff.
And free energy is just, it's here, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well,
I hear you. And you know what? My hat's off to that kind of optimism.
Oh, big time, yeah.
You know, and at the same time, again, sitting back and again, I can't talk publicly about a lot of the events and things I'm aware of, but again, I bet we weren't even to the 30-yard line, you know, and, you know, again, it's again, I don't think, in my opinion, in the current environment, particularly with so few people involved, that scaling the ramparts strategy has any kind of chance, unless, and again, this is the thing, it's quite possible. I mean, and this may happen. And again, I don't want to say this can't happen. It's possible that a Greer or a Dennis or an O'Leary or a Beard, somebody's going to, you know, gird themselves, and they're going to finally try to storm that castle, and they're going to run up to it, and they're going to find the castle doors open, okay, and they're going to be going right through there, and there's the king on the throne there in the very back, and he's going to go, "I'm glad you're here. What do you have? Oh, okay, let's do it."
Yeah. That
may happen. But you know, if that happens, it's because that's how it's the king and his minions have decided. Okay, let's let this happen. You know.
Yeah, we'll let the rest of the people play with the toys now that we've had in our underground bases for the last 40 years.
Yes. Oh, this stuff's been around for a very long time, and in fact, again,
we get to use it, but no, you cannot use this stuff.
Yeah. The stuff that, again, the stuff that I'm aware of, and again, this is stuff I mean, people very close to me have seen some of this stuff. Okay, today's physics textbooks, and this is one of my colorful sayings, look like cave drawings. Okay, compared to the principles that this stuff operates under. Okay, and my understanding is that the humans that are you know, have this technology, et cetera, which is, again, I'd imagine a lot of us reverse engineered, captured ET craft, et cetera. But my understanding is that what we have is exceptionally primitive compared to the stuff, the thing that they copied. Okay, it's exceptionally primitive, and
right.
and again, it's a thing where I've been following Greer's work for a long time, and I've heard his witnesses talk about it. And again, the person that's close to me saw this stuff. I mean, they're describing the stuff that Greer's witnesses are talking about. It's real. This stuff is real. But you and I aren't going to be invited to that show.
You don't get to play with those toys.
Yeah. In fact, when they showed it, it was just like, you see what we got here? Now we're going to put it back in the box, just letting you know it exists. You know.
Yeah.
And so that's
hey,